Howdy and welcome to the Mighty Muddy Chuck channel. I'm Chuck. A lot of people, they talk about the Mandela Effect and they theorize, different theories for it. And I come up with my theory, which, it is what it is. I think it's interesting. And I think the theories of other people are just as interesting, But yeah, here's the thing. The first radio station was November 2nd, 1920. It was called KDKA, and it was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. First radio station, November 2nd, 1920. It was KDKA, and it was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The first television station was W2XB. It began in 1928, and it began in Schenectady, New York. Okay, this is 2017. I started saying 1917. Wow, he lost his mind, baby. But the first radio station, 1920. First television station, 1928. The first motion picture, now this goes back a little bit further, it was 1889. 1889. That was the first motion picture. And it was just a picture of, a horse galloping. That's what it was. That was the first motion picture. So what's my point? My point is the age of the media, which eventually evolved into what we have now, the information age, is fairly new. Now, if you're a young whippersnapper, you may want to argue that point. No, 1920 is a long time ago, baby. In relative terms, no, it's not. So what's my point? My point is a lot of us assume the Mandela Effect is a new phenomenon. That's why I came up with my theory. I based on the idea that it was something new, it's something different. There's a change in the universe. There's something weird happening. Hasn't happened before. That's what we tend to think. We notice these conflicted memories, and we think this is the first time in the history of the universe that people have had conflicted memories where they don't agree on things. Conflicted memories. Things are different now than they were in the past. What we now know as we research on the internet, it's different. It's changed. Lines in movies have changed. Lines in songs have changed. First time ever this has happened. That's what we think. But why do we think that? We think that because we have the internet where we can kind of research stuff and we can compare notes with other people. Before recent history, you go back a ways, I would notice changes in the lines in movies. I don't have a great memory, but even so, I would notice that lines have changed. And sometimes I think, well, I just remember it wrong. And sometimes I think, well, that's a different version of the movie because my understanding is that a lot of movies, a lot of media have different cuts, different edits, sometimes designed specifically to target certain audiences. In other words, a person might see a movie in Georgia that's different than the movie that's released in California. The movies may have subtle differences or major differences. So, back in the day when I noticed differences, I said, well, that's a different cut, a different edit than what I originally saw. And, of course, you got a lot of movies will be made based on the basically the same script, same story idea. So you'll have several movies that's very similar. Of course, that's different than what we experienced with the Mandela Effect in that, a major movie, not some B movie, but a major movie, we noticed that the lines have changed. So, it's a little bit different than, say, like a B movie that's made 10 times. I mean, there was no movie made before the original Star Wars. It's not like they experimented with it and then came up with what eventually became the hit. Some westerns, you'll see westerns where they basically use the same script and they release different versions of basically the same script. So with those kind of movies, you can kind of guess. Well, okay, I'm just remembering that movie. I've got that movie confused with that movie because they're similar. Of course, Star Wars is different. Forrest Gump is different. I'm not trying to suggest, that's the same thing because, they weren't B movies. They were hits. They might have had different versions released or different cuts. One might have been kept in a vault and another released to the general public. But my point is, my long, winding ramble to the point is that maybe the Mandela Effect is not a new phenomenon. Maybe things have always changed. Maybe this isn't something new. I mean, my theory is based on the idea that this is something new. A lot of the theories is based on that this is something new. And therefore, you want to say that maybe CERN caused it, or, my theory about that, what my theory is. It's based on the idea that this is something new, but what if it's not? When you go back to more primitive times. You didn't have movies, you didn't have TV, you didn't have radio. You had communities of people. You didn't have computers. How many different types of lives were led? There was a fairly large variety of what a person's life might be like in different times. But to some degree, a large number of lives were fairly mundane. You get up, you do whatever you do. You do some things, you do every day, like you eat, go to the bathroom, and you go to sleep, you wake up. The basic core part of life is fairly mundane. And you do basically the same things over and over again. What's to notice a difference? You're living back in the older times. You weren't exposed to as much information. You were not exposed to as much information. And lives tended to be more mundane. There were exciting lives. I don't mean to say that all the lives lived in the past were boring. Obviously not. A lot of the best movies we watch are conceptualized based on stories of lives that people actually led. And sometimes it's fictionalized accounts of the lives, and sometimes not. But the average person lived a fairly mundane life. So what's to change and what's to notice when it has changed? Think about it. Is the Mandela Effect really a new phenomenon, or is it something that's simply come into focus because of the information age? Is it come into focus mainly because of the information age? Now, I can't prove that the Mandela Effect is something that goes way back. I can't prove that it's not a recent phenomenon. I can't say with certainty that if you go back and if you had if the information age was, around in the 1800s, you wouldn't have a similar phenomenon. I mean, I can't prove that the Mandela Effect goes way back. I also can't prove that it's just a recent phenomenon. But there is something that kind of points to what I'm talking about, and that is police investigations. Police investigations. One thing police can tell you is when they talk to witnesses who have all witnessed the same event, they've all witnessed the same event, but from different perspectives, how they relate that event, how they describe that event, how they talk about that event, it varies from person to person. 5 people can see the exact same event, and yet they really don't see the exact same event. It's all from perspective. It's all from perspective. And that's what makes, criminal investigation kind of difficult. Is you really want good, you want a good eyewitness whose testimony will stand up in a court of law. But where you've got, say, lots of witnesses all saying different things, it makes the case more difficult. And a lot of times that's what police have to deal with. They have to deal with the fact that people who see the same thing don't see the same thing. And that creates contradictions. There's a conflict in their stories. There's a conflict in their memories. A conflict in their memories just like, well, not maybe just like, but similar in basis to the Mandela Effect. Now, you can't really say that a person remembering that Mandela died in prison and other people remembering that he didn't die in prison, and the reality is that in this world at least, he didn't die in prison and he went on and became a respected leader. You can't really say that that's the same thing as when police ask witnesses to tell them the color of a suspect's shoes. One person may say brown, another person may say black, another person may say blue, another person may say pink. Pink person's probably also seeing pink elephants. But the point is you really can't say it's exactly the same. Because, it's not. But it may point to the nature of this world. Both examples, that conflict in memory, may point to the nature of this world. Something about the nature of this world. And it may point to the idea that maybe the Mandela Effect isn't really something new. Maybe it's not really something new. Maybe it goes way back. And that points to the nature of this world. Not some change. Many of us were trying to theorize that, there's been a change. There's something going on. There's something weird. It's a weird phenomenon. It's never happened before. That's the way many of us were kind of looking at it. But what if it's not really something new? Maybe it simply points to the nature of this world. Maybe the information age is helping us see things more clearly, so we realize that we don't really see things clearly. That we're not exactly all in the same world. You can say that the people simply have faulty memories, and that's the way a lot of people want to explain the Mandela Effect itself, is that, people have faulty memories. And you can, and that's what people want to say when you've got a bunch of witnesses and they don't agree on what they've seen. Well, it's faulty memories. What if it's not faulty memories? What if it's not faulty memories in either the Mandela Effect or that people see or remember a suspect wearing different color shoes? They can't agree on the color of shoes the suspect is wearing. Is it a faulty memory? Or did that suspect really wear, in some reality, different color shoes? That would be weird, wouldn't it? Weird, man. Weird.